We're going to shift gears and now move into the next session. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a little different. Instead of Q&A at the end, this is going to hopefully be all Q&A amongst yourselves and as a group. We're going to collaborate on this content. I've got a little bit of a lead to move by and to follow along with, but we're going to really hit on. So, who struggles sometimes with the definition of AI? Anybody struggle with that? I know I do. Thank you for being with me. The reason I struggle with it, it's kind of like CX. It means different things to different people, and sometimes very different things to different people. Customer experience, in some organizations, that's customer service. That's the contact center. In others, it's more global. In others, its focus is really on digital. It's got a different definition. Some, it means surveys. AI is similar. We talk a lot about AI. We even use terms like generative AI, but we don't really talk about what that necessarily always means. And so we're in this transformation. I kind of started the day by saying we're in the midst of this change. It's being driven by tech, by data, by AI as well. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the top use cases that most businesses are seeing and leveraging today. So hopefully these are the use cases that you both want to understand, but are also participating in as well. The first AI, what does AI mean? So I kind of translated this a little bit, hopefully in a fun way. It says, well, the first one is assisted interpretation. So my runners are ready in the back, but assisted interpretation is what we are seeing now and where we really got enthusiastic with ChatGPT. The ability to look at large amounts of data, summarize it, understand it, study it, come up with high points and highlights, and ultimately make it something that you can consume. Now, some of the value, the documentation process greatly streamlined for most organizations. Faster decision making, greater comprehension. Think about lawyers or paralegals. The ability now to look at reams of law journals and come from out of that a summary of what you most need to do. Paralegals is one of those industries or one of those jobs that's going to change greatly because of the use of AI. The risks, who's seen something that's just way oversimplified in ChatGPT? So how many of you actually use ChatGPT for different things? Personal, professional? Yeah, most everybody uses it at some level. So let's now talk about that. First opportunity to kind of share. So when we think about this category of assisted interpretation, share a little bit about what you're doing, what you've learned from that activity. Let's start sharing a little bit with each other, hopefully, and help each other out. So who'd like to start? Come down off the stage a little bit and stand over somebody. All right, we got somebody in the back. Nope, right there.
Is this working? Okay, perfect. So on a personal note, I overanalyze decorating bedrooms, living rooms, my home, okay? I don't know if anybody can relate, but I like to have the flow work really well and have everything optimized and a place for everything and everything has its place. And I had... our bedroom, my wife came to me and told me that she wants to have a workspace in the bedroom. And I said, I don't think that's very good for flow because you sleep right there and you work right there. Chances are you're probably going to do more sleeping than working. I didn't tell her that, don't worry. I thought, I'm having a hard time figuring out the dimensions of this room. Let me plug it into cloud and see what it comes up with. So I plugged in the size of the bed, the size of the desk that we would probably use, where the windows are approximately. So I just say it's in the northeast corner of the room. Here are the closets. This is the clearance that it needs to open. Make my bedroom a work/sleep space and make it flow really well. And that's exactly what it did.
So you were very happy with what it came out with?
I was very happy with it. Yeah, it worked really well.
That is a use case I honestly had never even actually thought of using. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Who else wants to share a little bit with how they use this kind of assisted interpretation of content and writing? Oh, up front.
So I use ChatGPT a lot for both work and personal items. So in terms of work, sometimes when I'm putting presentations together, I want to make my PowerPoints as concise as possible. I'll give it context, like I'm writing this for X leader. These are the points that I want to convey. Sometimes I'll keep telling it to make it more concise for me and like kind of group my thoughts together. And I find that's a very efficient way of doing things, even for like my year-end review. These are the things I delivered. These are the company values. Just put them together in terms of like writing that out. And even for personal things, like you can take a look at your fridge. I have an eggplant, a zucchini, this, like help me with, I don't know, a recipe.
Yeah. Awesome. So how many of you feel like you literally probably save at least several hours a week from a function like this? Yeah, a lot of people. I know I do. So as a solopreneur, my admin is me, my marketer is me, and so I use this stuff incredibly often because it helps, put that together. But especially in this context, it can oversimplify. I, for instance, when it first came out, I said, all right, here's all this information, write a blog post and refer to my friend's book and let me put it out there. I didn't pay enough attention to what it wrote. I didn't read it close enough. It changed the title of my friend's book, who proceeded to then note me, direct message me and say, I kind of like the new title, but why did you change my book? And I said, oops, that was not me. I apologize for that. So you got to worry about, you got to watch out for that. You got to understand that. But this is also where in business as well, a lot of us are using it personal. In business, this is the exact same opportunity to look at reams of data about a customer and then summarize the most important things for your employees. Who uses a use case like that? Kind of a summarization of customers or content, knowledge-based articles? Okay, definitely. Would you mind sharing a little bit more?
Thank you. Just a recent example. I was asked to put together a one slide on a new feature being offered by one of our partners, external partners, one of our vendors, to try to sell it to another partner within the organization. I had all these decks and PDFs and emails and not enough time, and I just plugged in. I just asked ChatGPT, just based on the internet, like what's out there, summarize, 3 benefits, costs, what's coming, what's next, features, and it just gave me all the info I needed to do a slide. So it saved me a lot of time on something that I didn't find very value add.
Absolutely. And this is what's so exciting about this function in business, because if you take a few hours of our individual time of improvement and time back, if you will, in the day, think about what that looks like across a 10,000 person company, the ability to do that. And so there's so much really focused, positive movement here. But again, I like to equate AI today. I mean, there are a few things. AI is the worst today that it'll ever be. It'll only get better. At the same time, you got to kind of treat AI like an intern. I've heard people say, it's like an entry-level employee. No, it's more like an intern right now, because you got to double-check the work. You got to make sure that it makes sense and it didn't make connections that just don't exist. So we're going to keep going a little bit. And the key there, though, is the data that it's trained on. That is the core, especially when you're looking at summarizing data. You got to make sure. So, what I see when I consult a lot of companies is they don't realize until they go this route that their knowledge-based articles aren't nearly as good as they thought they were, because it's finding. I mean, that old term of garbage in, garbage out, AI will put a spotlight on the garbage too often if you're not careful. So you really have to focus on the inputs there, that high quality documentation, and then you got to have really good NLP. We talked about that a little earlier. So the next is advanced imaging. So AI, what does it mean? It means advanced imaging. How many marketers or designers do we have in the room? So it's a big group over here, several spread out. My son is studying at the university for graphic design. And I told him, thank goodness you didn't graduate 2 years ago, because you'd have to go back to school and relearn everything new. You're learning at all this, but this advanced imaging, now there's the kind of use cases where it can study images, like health screenings or x-rays or things like that. But in this context, I'm just thinking brand and marketing. That hits everybody. The ability to do that, because you can train it on things like, this is our brand, these are our, obviously our colors and what we want to represent, and here's the themes and the terms, et cetera, and then it can be your assistant, and there are platforms built on that. So who uses imaging and visuals out of a version of AI? So who out there wants to talk a little bit about their use cases? Yep, okay.
So we design in Canva a lot, and Canva has started having like AI generation automatically within the program. So we don't necessarily use the final versions that AI comes up with within Canva for deployment, but it's good for idea generation. And if you're making some fun PowerPoints and want some creative visuals to kind of get some ideas going, it could be really useful for that.
Yeah, well, and being able, even on my iPhone, I click on myself with, in a background, and I can cut myself out, easily and put myself on another background for some sort of a speaking promo or something like that. It's just amazing. Who else? Who's got use cases there? Right up front.
Using Adobe when I'm trying to find an image and I can't find it, and I can have them create it for me.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Because now you don't have to worry as much about, they haven't made the laws yet, but about copyright infringement and where it comes from. So sourcing that for presentations or posts or anything marketing and media. So again, there's a lot of value there. Who's seen six fingers on a picture created by AI? Plenty, right? Who's seen, you can see some really funny stuff and funky stuff, and videos where people are like ghosts because they kind of wave in and out, and see through and things like that so it's got some challenges still. It's getting better, but part of that opportunity. But this is another one of those areas that's saving time and energy, iterating on marketing campaigns, doing 10 in the time it used to maybe take to do 2 and have that A/B test in those opportunities. But you got to, again, another opportunity, understand the risk. You got to have, especially in the brand use case, you got to make sure you don't just go wing it. You've got to define your brand, and that takes further thinking and even well beyond normal brand documentation, because it's going to do things that you don't want it to do if you don't really focus on telling it where to focus. So, and again, you've got to really understand what that purpose is. What does AI mean? Agent intelligence, probably one of the biggest. Now, this is combined chatbot and Copilot agent assist. I'm looping that into one bucket. Now, I've got to assume that a lot of you are looking at ways to make customer service more automated through technology. Do I have an agreement there that this is probably the top, one of the top opportunities we have out there? So I'd really like to hear some folks who already are down that path of what got them here, what are they working on, and what are they seeing early on in the process. Who'd like to share? Anybody doing Copilot? In the back over here.
I don't know if it's a full Copilot, but we're kind of trying to we're reviewing our whole tech stack right now, because most softwares have some sort of AI in it, right? And so instead of trying to buy something that will solve all the problems, we're really looking at what do we currently have? Are we using whatever AI features it offers? So kind of starting out on this journey to do a lot of digital transformation over the next 2 years, we looked at our CRM, and so we've started to surface a ton of data there, and now we're just in the process of implementing the AI layer that will create generative recommendations, right? So we're looking at ticket data and how many times we've talked to a customer and what is the sentiment and all these different data points. And the AI, hopefully starting in Q1, will start to say, of all this stuff that we have surfaced for you that our CSMs now have to just take and judge and action themselves, the AI will be able to say, you really need to focus on more senior strategic relationship, right? Yeah. That tactfully the customer's healthy, they seem to like the product, but you do not have a healthy leadership or strategic relationship, so that's where you should focus your time to have the biggest impact. And then we're also, Zendesk is here, so plug for them. We use Zendesk for our customer support today, so if a customer has a product issue or question, they'll use that. We're going to kick off implementing Zendesk for CS to do a one-to-many sort of case type approach similar to support. So the experience is the same, but customers can kind of come to a help page and say, I'm looking for help. Is it a question, or am I interested in buying something, or is it a strategic question? Click here. Is something broken? Click here. And so it's kind of running alongside processes we already have and improving on things we already have.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is where it's so exciting about the opportunities we have, and I did love the Zendesk. Obviously some of the risk being over-reliance, leads to, potentially some challenges there and ineffective responses. I think back to the first time we had GPS, and all I used it for was, one trip, and I realized after going there a dozen times, I actually didn't know where I was going because I was always just watching the screen and having it tell me. So that over-reliance, we've got to be careful of that as well. But again, it goes back to the source data. What are you training the data on? What are you constantly leveraging the data on? So we're going to keep going. So AI, what does it mean? Automation, integration, process automation. So this is, you can kind of talk about the opportunity for those repetitive tasks, robotic process automation, or really any of those things to drive, automation across that. A little different in this context from agent assist, because you're actually asking the AI tool to do the entire process. How many of you have been using some level of RPA for a while? Process automation. In the back. And so you're moving forward. Do you mind sharing a little bit about how that's evolving now and maybe getting better? Get a mic to him.
The process automation I work on is predominantly on reporting mechanisms. It's been not now, but even before the AI came into place, it was some kind of a stored procedure in the SQL that generates reports and that. But now, we don't have to worry about all of this, and the platforms itself have enough intelligence to pull the data, pull the regression analysis that you need to do, and send out the reports good. So for me personally, that has removed my dependency on me upskilling myself in SQL.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Well, I think because you're seeing that as we go through these lists, they're getting more and more impactful, because the last one was helping kind of in the customer service channel. Now this is in many ways replacing some of that activity. But again, you've got to make sure that you've got the right data. It's been a year now, but Air Canada has that famous one of the chatbot making up a process around bereavement that didn't exist. And they, actually the government went after them for that. So you've got to make sure that source data is always accurate. So again, what does AI mean? Adaptive interactions, personalized customer engagement. We're at the point now, I talked about it in the opening day, we're at the point now where we can interrupt people who are going down the not happy path, if you will, or going to see a risky outcome because we know like all of the people ahead of them that followed that path ended up frustrated or upset. And we can interject with that by being integrated with your chat, your IVR, any of the tools, your website, all of that can now be integrated at that level, and you can adapt that and create the personalized experiences. I'm going to keep us going because I just realized we're spending more time on this than I thought. But, again, you've got to make sure you're understanding the needs. If we are going to personalize, the only way we can personalize effectively is with AI. Otherwise, the decisions needed to drive that kind of interaction, to drive that kind of personalization and customization, it's too difficult if you don't leverage technology like AI. And that's where we have to continue to go. So the last of the what does AI mean, actionable insights. Now, this is the last one on the list, but I like to say, to me, this is the most important one. Because you've got to have this understanding of what you need to do in your organizations before you do any of the first 5 examples of AI. If you don't understand your experience, if you don't understand where the challenges are, you can't prioritize the work that needs to be done. This is also probably the most mature, using AI, the most mature category, because we've been doing AI, machine learning, for decades. That is, and that's AI. It's not degenerative say, but it's the root of what we do and the knowledge we gain from this. And this is why we talked so much earlier today about how important the data is, how important connecting the data. because it's all about the data from that perspective. Now, data can include surveys. It does include transactions. It does include behaviors. It includes anything and everything you've got, which is why it's so difficult to make that connection. But this is where the key comes together. Now, who's seen the Gartner hype cycle? AI hype cycle. Is anybody familiar with it? All right, let me go over this. This is kind of a standard. This is an older version. This is 2023. But I got to give Gartner credit. I'm stealing this from them. Not stealing it. It's public at this point. But what you're looking at is kind of the normal cycle of new technology. And there's hype cycles for a lot of different things. In this case, it was looked at AI. And what you start off with, you start like we were in 2023, right off the launch of ChatGPT in late 2022. And everybody saw just a little glimpse of what it can do, and it was like, oh, this is going to be incredible. The hype is building, and it's building to a huge crescendo of oh my God, it's going to change everything. It's going to make everything so much better. And then we started seeing it hit this high point, and this is 2023. Generative AI was right up there at the top. And then all of a sudden, we started seeing the news of things that not, hallucinations, things are not breaking, things are not working properly as we expect. You hit the second, after the peak of inflated expectations, it's going to solve the world. And it's like, well, it's going to solve some problems in the world. Then you see that trough of disillusionment. We're kind of in that right now with some of the ChatGPT and some of that, because again, the newness is worn off, and then we're now into that, that time of, okay, now it's great that it helps me write a review. Can I really trust it to do something like that for my business at a really macro level and write, do whatever, I need it to do? Then it's going to hit that low point, and then it's going to start, and this is when it starts to productize. Now it starts to plateau. And this is a standard for any tech boom, any new tech that comes out, is that peak expectations, get a little disillusion, and then it works itself into what is more of a long-term permanent. And we're going to see that. If you look at the different items, assisted interpretation, agent intelligence, automation integration, adaptive interactions, actionable insights, they're all at different levels of this hype cycle. And actionable insights is further along, like I said, because it's been around longer and been done longer, in the more traditional sense. The key there is every vendor is different. So not only do you have the core technology capabilities, but then your partners may be on different levels as well in their own journey. And so as you think about what you want to do and where you want to go with this new technology, the key comes down to data is the key. For some reason it's cutting a lot off. Data is the key. So what I recommend for any company who's even remotely thinking about AI in some form is start working on getting your data in order. You don't have to fix it all. You just have to start the processes that will help you consume the data, review the data, improve the data with that future in mind of when things are going to be more automated. And so as you think about where you're going and what you're wanting to do, don't skip that step, because it's where you've got to start. Now, I've been speaking all day. I'll be here again tomorrow, but this is my first opportunity. I know I asked you all to take a survey for this event. This is a survey for me. I love feedback about, because I'm a CX professional. I want to know, am I doing a good job? The other thing about this, if you give me feedback, at the end of it, you're routed to my personalized reports. Some of the reporting we talked about and research that I mentioned earlier today with Jason are available here as well. So I'd love for you to do that. It'll be up again tomorrow at some point, but I know not everybody stays for day 2. So even if you just bookmark it and hold on to it and think about it later, that'd be great as well. But we're now